Alors, bonsoir tout le monde, bienvenue, excusez notre énorme retard de 2 minutes. Bienvenue à cette réunion du comité permanent du conseil municipal sur les stratégies et les politiques publiques. Ce soir, ce sera essentiellement la présentation du personnel, les nombreuses présentations du personnel aux membres du conseil municipal pour la préparation des budgets, pour finir avec la préparation des budgets. Évidemment, la réunion de ce soir, il n'y a jamais de vote final qui est pris ou résolutions qui sont amenées. Alors, le budget nous sera ramené dans sa version finale un peu plus tard au début du mois de décembre, si je ne me trompe pas. Le 9 décembre. Merci, M. Lançon. Alors, sans plus tarder, je vais inviter, puis je vois qu'il est déjà là, tout près, notre grand trésorier qui va essentiellement faire la...
Let's put everything on the table, put the apron on the table. Let's get started. Good evening, everyone, members of council, colleagues, and people in the room. As the mayor says, the public who is listening to us, our vast public listening to us on the web. Okay, just a summary. The budget 2020, as the mayor said, we're at the presentation of the operating budget, the general, as well as the water and sewer. But as to the members of management, it's been since the end of August, early September, that we've been working on this budget to present them to you. But what you've seen so far, on October the 15th, we had a presentation made for the capital general water and sewage, followed by the asphalt presentation, a presentation of the asphalt and the program of the management of assets. On October 21st, we had the external commission that came to present their demands, and we're here today. We have 5 presentations before I come back here to talk to you. The first one will be a request from Human Resources presented by Madame Christine Roy-Caro, as well as the program for the recreational will be presented by Mrs. Pauline Cormier to continue with the building by Rémi Cohen and the Duaron house by Rémi Duaron. I leave the floor to Mrs. Caron. No pressure, but welcome for the first time to the Municipal Council. You think, eh? Wow, no pressure at all. Good evening, everyone, to one and all. Without any further delay, Martin was unable to be with us, so I'm here to represent her. And as Mr. Terrio said, I will go through the new position that we're asking in 2020, new position. As for the operation services, more especially for Uniplex, we're asking for a maintenance attendant. It would be for 5 new positions. The context surrounding this demand is to guarantee the operation and the management of Uniplex. At Uniplex, as you probably all know, there will be 2 ice surface, kitchen, community meeting room, concession, and a common space. The opening is scheduled for the fall of 2020. We would have to fill these positions ideally in June to make sure that the employees are ready for the opening of Uniplex. This being said, so it's 5 positions 5 new positions, if you wish. If we continue with the operation services, public works and water and storage, maybe we'll stop at each one, each group, just to see if there's any questions from the councillors, if we may. And then we can continue. Any questions from the councillors on the first block of requests? No? Fine. Okay, go on. Oh. Mr. Gadet? Concerning the maintenance attendant position, at the present time, how many positions do we have in the former arena, the Centennial, and will these people be transferred there, or is there any new activities that will be compatible to the people who are there? What happens with these people? Mr. Burke, maybe, for the details. While the 3 employees from the Centennial Arena will be affected to Uniplex, it will make a total of 8 employees. Uniplex, we're talking about 100,000 square feet. Arthur J. Leblanc, we're talking 55 to 60. We have 7 employees at Arthur J. Leblanc. At Uniplex, we figured that to start, we needed 8, just to maintain the schedule. And the use of the ice, that's what it will require. Thank you. I see no one else. So, if we continue with the operation service, operation and water and storage with the undertaking, with the FCM, we estimated that we should add 1 technologist operator to the 4 we presently have. Therefore, that position, the objective that could be applied to it is to allow to reach the level of operational services for the management of assets and to allow the necessary inspection of our assets, to allow a preventive maintenance of our assets. Any question? I forgot to say, if there's any specific question, go ahead. Any questions from the councillors? No? All right. Let's go on. Now, the next position that we are asking for is in the fire safety service. It's a platoon leader position. Since the fire security service is empty, these are the only 2 management positions. And was from our consultant to allow 1 new position to the platoon. It's to allow a rotation, more reasonable rotation among the management to cover all the evenings and the weekend, and to assure the commandment of emergency operation, to allow an increased supervision of officers in the operation and firemen, to guarantee a better health and safety for our firemen, and to help them out, and to guarantee the control of maintenance tasks accomplished by different working team. Any questions from the councillors? Ms. Arsenal. Thank you, Your Worship. A more reasonable guard on weekend. That means on a regular pay or overtime. Is that what it means? It would be paid on regular time, a regular salary. They're not unionized. They're management employees. They're not unionized. At the present time, they're probably working overtime because there's only 2 of them to cover 68 hours, 168 hours, I should say, for the whole week. There's only 2 of them. But it's for management. How many employees would that be? 1 only? When, for the time being, do we plan to add? There are already two at the present time. A third one would be added to cover 168 hours. Is that correct? Yes. Mr. Boudier, thank you, Worship. I would like to better understand what was the structure previously and what is it now. What changed that we have to add an additional member as management? We had a fire chief. We had a training division leader and a prevention leader. We were reclassified 2 years ago to district, Julien Boudreau and I, for the present time since last year. We are replacing the chief according to the needs. So we would have to add a manager as Human Resources said, for the health and safety of the firemen. The commander that we are asking Moncton to cover us at nights or on weekends would be to make sure that we can do internally. So we've been operating with two management for the present time, and we had three previously. Thank you very much. Mr. Mélenchon, no? Okay. Ms. Shaila, Your Worship. So, if we open competition contest this year for fire chief. Will this be filled when we have a leader? Yes, according to the even with the employees that we presently have, we don't have enough people or personnel at the present time. Your Worship, if I may, Councillor Ayla, yes, it's been identified for 2 or 3 years that we should need one additional person for nights and weekend. Some work has to be done during weekdays also. So it has to be sustained. This is the first step. The consultant is doing his job. As a report will be presented to the council to know the future of our service. But this is the first step. And there will certainly be other steps in another budget. But presently, we are aware that this can meet one of the needs. Is it possible the consultant will give his report when? We have a presentation. There are forthcoming in the next few weeks. We should have one before the end of the year. But his final report should be at the beginning of next year. There's a consultation process at the present time, and then the final report will be presented. Fine? Monsieur Blanc? Thank you, Your Worship. The only thing I wonder is all the position mentioned today, are they all full-time position? Yes. That's what I was looking at. They're all full-time? Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. So let's continue. Let's go on. The next position in our information technology service, it would be the position of a technical support analyst. This would be, if I may allow, it's like the help desk, if you wish. So the context of this position would be to give necessary adjustment in the capacity of information technology to answer the present operational need, to guarantee a better infrastructure security, to improve the time of intervention by technological support, to allow the replacement of team and equipment, and to assure the proactivity of new technologies and tendency. We have 4 persons at present time, and everybody does a little bit, but really it takes away from doing certain projects that would allow them to go forward. Position that position would really be to offer a technical support to the team. Question? Mr. Arsenault, Your Worship. These two positions, platoon leader and technical Support, are they unionized, Your Worship? If they're what? Are they unionized? Permanent, yes. No? Sorry, because of confidentiality. No, they're not. Mr. Boudier, yes, Your Worship. In the technology department, there are presently 4 individuals. We'll add 2 more. So the analysis was done. Did we look at contracting out or something that can be adapted? We can eliminate certain things. I'm looking at the programming in a position. Programming, sometimes we contract out the programming aspect. Did we look with the speed at which technology changes? Are we able to invest elsewhere to maybe avoid having to add one? Maybe to answer. Sean, he's in the back. We'll invite him. He said he would come. He said he'd be ready. He's coming. Oh, you'll have to come. He's coming. In part, yes, an analysis was done, but the municipal people, we have certain specialty have covered. Sometimes our director is here, so Your Worship. Thank you for the question. I hope the people will see this on TV. Yes, to answer your question, if we talk about technological leader, this position is to free the system analysis to do their real job with the service, the security, the update. We notice with time that the expectations are greater, if you wish. We have more demands and expectations, and we keep doing some supports with this role. It will allow us to do the real maintenance job. As for the programmer himself, well, if you want me to talk about it, the question what had to do with it. Our system in the city are not unique in that they don't exist elsewhere, but the combination of our system is unique. And they are all integrated one into another. So the combination of system make it that I can't contract out the work easily. Maybe some people would know components, cartography, mapping, and our finance system. When we do all of this, if we contract out, we'll waste and lose a lot of time. It's going to cost a lot more to have someone internally who will have the knowledge, will know the combination of our system. We will become more and more effective and efficient, so it'll be cheaper. So we did look how we could contract out, but it would be more expensive and less efficient. That's why we're proposing this position. Thank you. Mr. Cormier? To add the security of the infrastructure, I would like to have an explanation on this, if I may. How can an additional technological support can add? It's a very good question, and the support analysts will not as such improve the security, but our system and analysis will have more time to do some maintenance, will improve the security. So why we put it there as an element, it's 100% true. That's why we put it there. By having technical support, we're not doing the real job of infrastructure maintenance. That's why we're becoming more vulnerable. By having the good resource at the good place, we'll be more efficient. And matching will be able to be done. We have over 6,500 person to manage. We have about 30 sites that we manage. The security of all of that takes time, take resources. But if our present resources are losing support, the maintenance is not as good. So there's the logic of it all. All right, don't see any other question? No? All right. So we continue. Do you want me to go through the second position of the information technology service? Well, the programmer, intermediate analyst, that position would be filled in the fall of 2020. Not much of an impact on the budget. It is to finalize the implementation of the existing business system to allow the improvement of implementation of the system. It will free certain persons to be able to better implement new system to ensure the maintenance of the system and the support for the users. Question? Essentially, Sean answered these. The director answered these questions. We continue with a new position in administration. So in administration, the position that we're asking is a coordinator in continued permanent improvement. Since this came to the city, the consistent have always wanted that we have a full-time person to have a permanent improvement. He would be a coordinator in permanent improvement, and that person would assure a long-term success with the position in question. It would allow him to pursue the improvement of initiative, allow the development of new project, and to make the necessary follow-up to ensure the coordination of the involved persons throughout the organization, allow to spend more energy at the permanent improvement. Everything that is done in permanent improvement is through our employees in our full-time employees who are already there. Question? No question? So, next item. Sorry, there's one, Mr. Boudier. Sorry, it has to do with the position in general. So we have 5 new jobs and we have 5 other jobs. So if we look at 2019, how many employees did we have and how many will we have in 2020? Because there's some transfer or things like that. And what do we look at increase-wise for the budget? Will some jobs be eliminated? I'd like to have more details. As for the question, how many employees do we have on a full-time basis right now? The last time I checked was about 208. But as to what will be the budgetary impact, Mr. Terrio can better show you what the impact will be on the budget. Can you have the answer now? We could go forward. So, in the budget of 2020, the 5 positions that have just been mentioned, it's about $275,000 in more money compared to 2019, in the budget of 2020 compared to 2019. This excludes the 5 employees from Uniplex. It's a 5 position we just mentioned. As to Uniplex, it's a $219,000 or $221,000, I'm not sure. But I'd say $220,000 more. But these positions will start in June. Fast forward this in 2021, these 5 jobs for the full year of 2021 will be $395,000. But as to Uniplex, these are jobs that we had planned. were in the budget, they were being projected. When we talk about increase, 275 and 325, is that the salary? Does it include the increase? The benefits are included in those amounts. Benefits also. But, well, maybe the amounts that I just gave you are the amounts as the general operation budget, but there's an amount in water and storage. So there is certain positions are 100% in general, others are distributed or shared with water and storage. We're talking about $80,000. The position, since we're talking about this, the next two, that Mrs. Arwakayu will present the next one, a shared position. This one has an impact of $60,000 for the city and $31,000 with expansion. Yep, that's why we're sharing. And the last one should have a neutral effect on the general operation budget. There is a position that will be renewed that has been eliminated in 2019 that would be replaced by this position. Generally speaking, no impact on the general budget, but there will be a small impact with water and storage with the final position. Thank you. Other questions? No? Quickly, let's go through the last two that have already been dealt with. The new position that is shared, this position is shared between the communication service expansion there. It's a communication officer that will help to implement the communication plan of expansion Dieppe, support the undertaking for public participation, and to support the steps of the immigration strategy. That's it? No. The last one, yes. So, the one Mr. Theriault was telling you is the operation head in administration would be to prioritize the strategic axiom in the municipality to free the administration and to better balance the supervision of the 11 services and sector to continue the implementation of the report on organization structure. That goes back to 2015, if I'm not mistaken, is the Stapleton report that suggested that this position would be needed for the Dieppe. Is that it? That's it. Thank you. Other question on the additional position and everything that goes with it? No? So thank you very much. We'll continue with the presentation.
Avec
So this will be the Dwaro Heritage House, the Dwaro Heritage House. Unless somebody changed the order. Good evening, Madame Duguay. Before I begin, I'll just give you a context of this house. We have a picture, a digital picture of what the house looked like in 1791. Here we have a picture of the house in 1950. And you can see there have been changes to the structure outside. This is the house when the city bought it in October 2015. And today, here's where we are. With the restoration of the house, we've done a lot of work. since we've become the owners of this house. A lot of restoration, very detailed inside the house and the exterior as well, as you can see on this picture. The next stage for this project would be the facilitation and interpretation, so we can open it up to the public and present all the hidden treasures in this house. The first phase of animation interpretation is the main floor, the attic, and the basement. So we want to build interpretation panels and cabinets for the artifacts that we have found in the house. Objects that were there in the beginning of the house, so we had the chance to find them. The furniture as well, graphics, and management of the project, directional signs, so it could be easy to find for everybody, creation and writing of the facilitation concept, installation of the exhibition, and the finishing of the attic and basement. We have restoration work that we must do in these two sections of the house to complete the project. Finally, all the audiovisual components, because we want to present an exhibition with interpretation and panels and artifacts, but as well we want a multimedia exhibition. We want audiovisual components, a virtual guide for visits, augmented virtual reality, interactive survey, interactive games, and a model of the house. We have a lot for the visitor. We hope to welcome visitors in June 2020. Any questions? Councillor Cormier. 1 second. I have a comment. The first slide, it said 1791. I don't think it was built at that time. It was in the 1800s, wasn't it? Yes, it was 1891. It was built in 1741, but this picture was taken in 1891 when the barn was added to the house. You're right, Councillor. It's easy for you to remember that, Councillor Cormier. Councillor Boutier. That being said, I didn't see the barn mentioned. Can you tell us how you'll use the barn? Yes, it will serve as a hall to have events, concerts, and the city will have events in the barn. We'll have interpretation to explain the use of this barn. It was also considered as a shed for the family because we would find the equipment there for the farm. The barn where we kept the animals was a little farther away. I have a point to make. It's a big part of the project. And then the creation, the writing of the concept, we will have to facilitate that for the quotes. And I want to ensure that we follow the same principles as we did with the arena, so there won't be any extra costs added. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you. Any other question? Thank you. Now we've got 2020 grants, organizations, and event hosting. Good evening, councillors, public. We have grants. We're here every year. There haven't been too many changes since 2019, but we'll go through them with you. The budget for 2020 is $294,400,000 compared to 2019, it was $296,000. We have agreements with the council, Ballet Theatre Atlantic, right, year 5 next year, University of Moncton, the Cathedral, Jules Lacadie, as well as extraordinary care for the Moncton Hospital. So we're replacing that for the next 5 years, $10,000 for a total of $95,000. Do you want to go through each side with questions? Any questions on this first phase? No questions? Our policy L13s, these are the grants we give according to the politics established. We have partnerships as the Santa Claus Parade, $2,000, and the Saint-Anselme Church and the parking across from it to share with the trail during the winter. So we pay a lot of the snow removal with the church. So this is $2,500. Any questions? No? Policy L15 grants to community groups that we help for youth. We have the Army Cadets, $2,400. That's for the gym for youth. Club d'Âge d'Or de Dieppe for the programs, $2,000. Boys and Girls Club, it's Repère Jeunesse now, $50,000. Gymnastics extension, $14,000 for their gym, 40% that we're paying. We don't have a gym, so we gave 40% to them in the amount of $14,000. At the Youth House in Dieppe, that's $54,000. The same policy, I'll continue, Youth House, Community Intervention, $46,000. It's not just to the house, because the office is there, but it's a program of the city. Pro Jeunesse, $3,715. We do a little bit of marketing and for their programs. Dieppe Scouts, with their building at the Rotary Club, is at $6,000. And military veterans of Dieppe, $2,500. And we give them a little support for their annual ceremony, about $1,000 for their sound system. So this total for L15 policy is $178,650. Councillor Alain. Thank you, Ms. Cormier, for your presentation. Would it be possible to give us the names of participants for these organizations for the policy L15? For the gymnastic club, Extenso, and for the youth house, they've had a lot of challenges in 2019. Can somebody from the house of the board would come before us and tell us what's going on there? Is there an executive director? And the community intervention, I would like to know We need objectives, goals. Have they reached them? $46,000 that we give them. Are they doing their job? The house has been there for 15 years. I visited this summer. It would be interesting to know what is going on there. And we would like them to come before council as well. $100,000 is what we give them. To answer that question, a few months ago, youth groups came to do presentations before council. We have a new director this year, Guillaume. I can't remember his last name. I only met him once. And he wasn't ready to come to do a presentation until January. And other organizations from Dieppe will come as well in January because they weren't here in the fall. And they'll answer all your questions. We spoke to them. We spoke to Mr. Guillaume. He was okay with the budget. He's new in this position, but he'll give you a presentation on street workers. I hope that he has figures, because it's something in 2020 that if I have the chance, I could vote against that. Thank you, Councillor Godet. Thank you, Your Worship. The budget for 2019, 294,000, was it fully used up? And the 2020 budget, is that 100%, or is there a reserve there for requests within the year? I'll present all the new requests and it will go in that. But for 2019, we had a bit of a reduction, about $300. And the total for 2020 is not totally allocated. Only 2,500 has not been allocated thus far. Councillor Brideau. Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to have some information concerning the intervention, community intervention program. What does that eat during the winter? That helps youth with problems. That's right next to the school. They're in the streets on weekends and during the nights to see where the teenagers are. So they do a lot of intervention with the youth. They're in the streets. I know them. They're very good. So Jeremy works very closely with the youth. If they have problems, they need to meet somebody, that type of thing. I was wondering if that was attached to Boys and Girls Club of Dieppe. No, his office is there, but he works with the youth of Dieppe, not only Girl and Boys Club. To elaborate a bit on the intervention program, if I recall, I think it's been there for 25, 30 years that we have somebody in that position. But it's a social worker, yes. We started with the crisis when we had the suicides of Mathieu Martin. In 1998, 1999, it's at that time that this position was created to intervene directly with the youth when the Maison des Jeunes, the youth house, was open. In 1995, we had a prevention program. No other questions for the next policy? L19, financial support for a youth group. All the youth that go to tournaments, championships, not only sports, but with culture as well. So this is an evaluation on the request. It's been reduced a bit from 5,000 to 4,500. So it answers Councillor Gadet's question of a while ago. This one was reduced. Any questions? L20, that's new. These are requests that we receive, the food bank, Crime Stoppers, Radio Temps, the Tree of Hope. There was a change for Nazareth's house. Any questions? None. The grants, events, we had new requests as well. It's not included in our document. So 2,500, these are the new requests. There was one that went to the music festival in Greater Moncton and for Sautred. We evaluate them as they come in. There's always new ones during the year. So these are new requests that we could receive and that must be evaluated. There are criteria, and this is the envelope that's available. I thought that the music festival, the regional one, that wasn't permanent. There was an agreement. Any other questions? So events, this is for 2019. It's $119,850. So 119,850 for 2020, and it was reduced, as you remember. We had the French International Games, that was 250,000, and it's not there anymore, so we left with this amount. So you can see the list here. If we have championships here that we organize, annual events and partnerships, Salon du Livre, Francofat, you know them. So this is the list of our festivals for 2020. Any questions? Councillor Leboutier. There might be some confidentiality, but can we have a summary of the amounts for each one? Yes. And we're going to renew what we did in the previous years? Yes. Is there an evaluation done on each of this festival with respect to the amount that is given? Yes, it'll be revised in 2020. That's it. Anybody else? Any other questions? So that finishes that part. Councillor Leboutier mentioned that for each program there should be an evaluation done annually to ensure that we meet our objectives or the organizations meet their objectives. No free ride. So this is the programs for leisure division program. We don't have new employees. The 4 sectors are culture and seniors. We have community officers that work on this each year. I'm not going to mention all of them. If you have any questions, I can answer them. So culture and seniors is what we have listed here. We have youth and health services, Complex Uni that will start next fall, will be ready. And we have the Doiron Heritage House. We have a festival of agriculture that hasn't changed. We have a family sector, Festival Imaginaire. We have pickleball, which is new, and the official opening of the Uni complex, the programs, and as well with the festival Hubcap. The community sector, we have Zone Connexion that you know well. They'll have a presentation before council very soon. The other things we've had before, we have walking on our trails. A lot of people are coming there. We should mention that too. We have runs in the city of Dieppe. We've had cutbacks in 2020. Renardi Summer Camp in 2020. We want to bonify youth activities. Is there a reason why we should eliminate it? We want to do more activities in Saint-Assim Park in the Zone Connexion. We wanted that the amount of the request would be reduced each year. Parents want their children to go to more structured, specific camps. So we'll put more employees on Zone Connection next summer and in the Rotary Park at Saint-Assim. The other reasons as well, there are no restrictions for the activities in Zone Connexion. We could take 360 youth at supper camps in Dieppe. A lot of youth will take part in this. We want programs at the Douara House too, and we'll have things going on there as well, as like my colleague mentioned a while ago. So those are the reasons for the camps. On the private sector, we have daycares as well, and with Renardi. Do you want me to talk about all three of them, and you can ask questions later? I see that lights are coming on. Councillor Godet. Do you know how many citizens go to that summer camp? 50, 100? 360 was the max. Is it full capacity? No, it was what? About 220. And with these figures, you determined that it wasn't popular. People didn't want to be structured to go there. And we saw last summer, there would be nobody outside with the children. So there's activities we could give them. Will those people have the opportunity? Even some of them don't want to be structured, others do. Can we offer those people something somewhere else? I know other cities offer that type of camp, and it seems to work well. We have specific things like the community kitchens that we can do we could do camps there. So there are theme camps. At the Douara House, we'll have camps. The Art Center, we have camps there during the summer months, and we have training and workshops as well. But it'll be open activities with them. With the budget cuts, with these cuts, is that the main reason why you want to cut back on summer students? Yes, I can explain the structure. Councillor Melanson, there's also the complexity of the work that was asked by our students. They're not experts in the field of daycare. Some situations were complex with youth today. That was another point that made us realize that we were going farther than what we were asked with our youth. And that was important because in private daycares, they have training and they have methods for certain situations as well with medication. So that was too complex and risky for us. After an evaluation, I realized that we should probably offer services to the public. We could welcome them, but not be in charge of them for the whole day. And the youth camps, a lot of people, the students that applied for are social workers too. Is there another point? There's a lot of other things going on in our community. Other groups organize things. Perhaps we were in conflict with some of them up to a certain point. Yes, with the private daycares. Friday nights, the University of Moncton. Councillor Leboutier. Thank you, Your Worship. With respect to Renardi camp, like we mentioned, if it's not the model that was right, perhaps we could adapt ourselves, analyze things. We have the Arts Center, Arts and Culture Center, and we may have the opportunity to have a theater camp. Shediac has one. Some people from Dieppe go to Shediac all the time. It's the University of Moncton that's organizing it. So we have theater camps, we have extreme sports camps. They visit different places in the community. Historical camps, we could have some kind of model, and perhaps the age level was lower. And then there are the costs. Private camps are very expensive, and it's not everybody else that can afford it. It could be a good opportunity to find a segment of the population, youth, that don't have opportunities. I think we should at least consider that. That's what I'm talking about, the specific camps. But the costs weren't very high. It was $125 for 2 weeks. Madame Cormier, yes, the youth festival, there weren't that many people. If it was raining out, there weren't any youth there. So for the youth festival, it didn't work well. Summer camps, people didn't want to come, different weekends. We had no requests. Third, intersocial program. People came much less. We had 25. So inclusion in the existing programs is there. So it's not the same as it was 30 years ago with these people. We have a handicapped committee in Dieppe that exists, and they have activities, and there are workshops in Memram Cook. So youth that came were coming. They were in apartment buildings that were working, so they changed. So it was hard to continue without large participation. That being said, we have added some. We have added for 2020 the Rotary Park at Saint-Assem. There's events there, not only at 1604 at Zone Connection. We'll have employees during the day, and the Heritage House Douaron will have things there. and there's rental of skates and hats for people that are coming here. They go to the library to find out where they can rent skates. So this year we're doing that. It's going very well. So we'll have a little shack for people. It's very pretty. It was built for us. We asked the community to give us helmets and skates that they didn't want anymore. So we already have about 20 pairs of skates. We have fewer for youth. So if you have youth that don't use them anymore, it would be helpful. We have helmets as well. So we have a partnership with people that are sharpening the skates that will do it for us every 2 weeks. So in our shack, we'll have employees on Friday nights to rent skates, Saturday afternoon from 12 to 4 p.m., and hopefully we'll have somebody for Sunday, hopefully a student. So on the weekends, people can come to our oval skating rink and they can rent skates. So we just have to find more skates, so we're really looking forward to see how it is going to go.
The other one is supervision of pickleball. Pickleball has become very popular. We're even talking with the tennis people for the sharing of the fields for the summer, and we have 3 nights of badminton. We want to add one for pickleball. We almost need the police, as it was before, have a supervisor, so we added a supervisor 1 night a week that will offer supervision at the pickleball 1 night. Any question there? Question? Mr. Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. Do I understand that the economy, by reducing program, it will be reinvested in something else? Yes, we will reinvest, but we have an economy of $30,000 saving, nevertheless. By cutting program, will that $30,000 be reinvested somewhere in the addition? No. We save $30,000 altogether. That's a saving. Thank you. Mr. Brideau. Thank you, Worship. Ms. Cormier, during the summer, I want to come back to the detail of pickleball. During the summer, I was approached by the organizers of pickleball who were trying to have an entrance on the tennis field that we have in the city. They wanted to try and do a sharing. Was that problem solved or settled? They were trying to use the free time where tennis was not using the field, the tennis field. I said, what is lacking that we can't meet and share? Well, if I'm not mistaken, we've discussed this for the installation at Majumata. They will use the property at Majumata. We are discussing with them. Yeah, I was approached by the pickleball people who want to have access to the tennis field. The 2 clubs are not agreeing, so we'll try to facilitate the discussions. Nothing has been agreed on, and we will try to help them to agree, try to find a time for both the group. So they were unable to agree? Well, we did not bring the 2 together at the table. We are starting the undertaking. The new requests came from pickleball. So in the weeks to come, we want to contact the tennis people and try to come to an agreement. I can't understand. The tennis field are in my area, my ward, and every morning I was going by the tennis field. It was not being used at all. That's what I was told. So how come you would not have access when they don't use it? I mean, well, with our sector, the full management of the tennis field is given to them following an agreement with the city. So it's one more way that we have to try and bring the new sport of pickleball and undertake the discussion. We hope things will work out. Thank you very much. Monsieur Alla? Pickleball. What the tennis field is owned by the city. We have an agreement with the tennis association. It's a 5-year agreement. I don't know. 3 years. Mike. Are they paying us or they do the management? Mike, for translation and the people watching, there's an agreement where we have an economy of savings. We don't have any students being paid by the municipality. We have a savings when we allow them to allow management. So we will facilitate the pickleball so that both, now they can't do it on their own, so we will take care of it. And I hope that if the rental of skates and the security helmet go well, that they will try to give it service if there is a greater demand. Yes, absolutely. Step 1, step 2, one step at a time. I just want to make a comment concerning a saving of $30,000 when it comes to the community and health and safety. I don't think it goes against my principles, my personal principles, but I think, generally speaking, the principle of most councillors, unless I'm completely wrong. We've always been proud to say that we spend more on the community service than we spend for the police service, and traditionally it's always been good for us. So I'm just asking you to talk about a saving in the delivery of community programming. It's not something that we should aim for. I leave it with you until the next meeting. Now you may continue. Student salaries, next year we'll have 42 student positions. It doesn't mean we'll have 42 because at 120,000 in 2019 we had 73 students position. That cost 106,000, so we saved an economy of saving of $40,000. So most of these positions is the youth festival took 20 position. In the summer, the way we will structure it is that we had a coordinator and assistant and monitor for the imaginary for Mackley Show for summer camp. Now we'll have one coordinator, one monitor, the 3 leaders for the 3 events, and then we'll have the monitors that will make 9 persons. So this summer I've had a discussion with 3 coordinators and with them directly, and they understand the structure because the missionary is very well understood, and that's how we came to this structure. Monsieur Thibodeau, thank you, Worship. It's a comment about the student salary. To cut 31 position out of 73 is a lot, because I believe that the students during the summer, we need to keep them busy. They need pocket money. They need to acquire experience on the working market, and for these reasons we should not cut all these positions. Maybe we don't need 73, but to go from 73 to 43 to 42 is a lot. As I mentioned, The youth festival took 20 positions. The other 11 are elsewhere. But nevertheless, we have added position. We added some at Duaro. And the other thing we did, maybe we have less students, but we keep them longer. We made a savings. So we will have a lot of university students, and monitor will be from senior high school. But during the year, they will remain at university. They want to earn for steps, and we can keep them longer until the long weekend in September. But some of these positions, you said, will be transferred to the youth in other connection. But yes, so a clarification, we're talking about the number of positions. I think it goes further. If we talk about 20 positions, maybe we're talking 1 week work for the 20. So it's not 20 positions, it's for 20 or 30 hours for each one of them. But it's for a week, a work of 1 week for the 20 of them. So within the context of what we consider a position would meet the needs with all the student jobs that we have. Maybe it leads confusion, but we talk about 20 hours for 20 people, so it's 1 week each. I wanted to clarify this confusion a little bit. Thank you very much. Your Worship, just this is an opportunity to say something. It's in the hiring of these students that you will consider to put a percentage of students of visible minority this year. We've been asking that for a few years by different means. If we could have 5 to 10% of our students who would be of a visible minority, it would help us with everything that is happening. As for the position of the city, about immigration, everything, I'm making that request. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. That's it, I believe. Thank you, Ms. Cormier. Thank you. This take us to Mr. Cobo. Your Worship, members of Council, good evening. Tonight I will present the program, the building renovation program. So this program, the link with the strategic plan, there are 3 sections in the strategic plan we want to talk about. We talk about maintaining the existing infrastructure. We're talking of finding the index of the existing building that was planned last year, but each year now we look at the index of the existing building. So the index of the existence of the building, we look at if some renovation are in need, reparation and repair, and we compare with the cost of rebuilding those buildings. We did it in 2018, 2019. If we look at the building of the city that were assessed, 19 buildings were assessed. The value to replace these 19 buildings was $66.7 million. So the index of condition of the building in 2019 is 1.44%. So here, if we look for the next 10 years, the renovation that would be needed to maintain the building is 7.35 million. If we do nothing for the building for the next 10 years, the index of condition of building would be 11%. So to go from 6% for the index of building conditions. So here it gave us a projection for the future if there was no improvement to the building. So we see that in 2024 we would be at our target of 6% if we put no money at all in the renovation of this building. So here, at the present time, we're proposing to invest $350,000 per year in the renovation, repair of the building. But if we look at the investment of $350,000, we'd be good until 2029 to maintain under our target of 6%. So if we make a comparison here, if we were able to, here it means that if we put $350,000 for the next 10 years, we would be at 6.9% in 2029. And if we were to invest $500,000, we would be at 4.64% in 2029. So for that reason, we're increasing the budget. We're asking to increase the budget this year. Last year was at $320,000. In 2020, we're asking $350,000. Eventually, we would want to reach $500,000 in the next 10 years on an annual basis. So for 2020, we're asking $350,000. I will tell you what was planned in the program for 2020. So for the budget 2020, we look at $560,000. So the $350,000 plus $210,000 will be transferred from the reserve account. The $210,000 comes from savings that we did this year. Transfer for this year. For two reasons, there was savings in the operations center. We redid the floor to protect them for a lifetime. We had economy there, we had savings there, and also the operation. We did the ceilings. We were supposed to do it this year, but we set it out for 2020. As for next year, the power improvement at the Arthur G. Leblanc Arena, and we have a request, this pilot project, we would invest $350,000 for improvement, and the MCM would cover almost 50% of the cost. That would be project for $700,000. So the energy project is something that we would plan for the building. We would get it at half price. And I also mentioned the aquatic center. The roof repair we were unable to do this year. We put it off for 2020. The other projects are smaller in scale. The Arts Center to fix the entrance. The wood is absorbing some water to redo the entrance in both places. And the Gova fire station. We want to fix the buildings and some different buildings. We want to invest in power improvement. And in 2019, we had incentive from NB Power for $35,000 some odd dollars. So we're asking investment will save power on our power bills, but over and above we're receiving incentive. So it's a double win. So the total for 2020, $560,000. So you want me to go question for 2020 or go year by year? Question, Mr. Gadet. Well, no, the energy improvement at Chez Leblanc, you say there's money that's coming from elsewhere. Is that a guarantee? If not, will the project go ahead or will these monies be set aside? Well, presently, we have feasibility study that is underway, and it's a matter of knowing what we could do to improve it. So preliminary study, but have been started. We'll go more in details once we're done with this. We'll ask the NB Power, and then we'll have to analyze to see if we don't get the funds that are good investment and good return on the investment in the municipality. Maybe we could go ahead. Maybe there are elements, it depends. So if it doesn't work, come back to the council for alternative project. As to the 350,000, no, 350,000, we'll have to discuss whether we have not determined the amount. Sometimes there are projects, if we know that there is, well, the 350,000 is not conditional. You will spend the 350,000 notwithstanding, or no matter what. Whether that you succeed with FCM. Well, we will see where our investment are at and what we're getting as far. This one, if we don't go ahead, we'll come back to the council to determine or confirm what we'll do with the 350,000. Fine, thank you. Shut Thank you, Your Worship. CDO Operations Center. What is a parapet? Parapet is the transition between a wall and the ceiling. So if you go slightly higher in the transition between the wall of the swimming center and the ceiling. I heard that. We learn something every day, don't we? Mr. Boudier. A clarification question. Well, we started explaining the building condition to invest. If we invest 350,000 for the next 10 years, we'll save 4 million, according to the 10% index. But now, after that, it's another subject, is the repair. The repair that we will make on the projects, because the energy improvement is not an improvement of a building. It's we will save some energy by another means. It will not improve or extend our building, the life of our building. But there are some components where we, both two ways, we can save on the change of light bulb, for instance, some bulbs, while some walls, for instance, are outside, there are certain things that we can do both with the program and the program we're proposing for the arena, some components. We could isolate the roof, the ceiling. So we have some doors at the entrance, some sliding doors. The doors are scheduled to be replaced. These are all things that we will save energy and power, but at the same time, we are fixing the building. Thank you. Let's go on. I'll go faster for the others, but in 2021, we have work planned for the Dieppe market, new lights also, and then the floor, mezzanine, and the stairway. The Culture and Arts Center, new lights, and the metallic, the outside, the fixing of the southern roof. If we look at the Arthur J. LeBlanc Arena, the Saint-Anselme surface, the bench, the board have to be replaced. 175,000 is planned. The youth house The ventilation system is to be changed, and the lights at the parking of City Hall. So for the year 2021, we have planned $325,000 in renovation. Any question for 2021? Yes, Monsieur Brideau. Your worship. Monsieur Como. I don't want to go ahead of myself, but I'll mention the cost of repair a lot of facilities, what we can save, what we can save. I haven't seen anything so far, because in 2021, our Centennial Arena will go somewhere, or will. I didn't see in your planning what is being reserved for that sector, for the Centennial Arena. It's not in the renovation program, because how can it sit? Well, we try to repair as little as possible, knowing that we want to get rid of it, so it's not in the account of repair, would be in another account where money would be planned. Maybe Stefan can talk about it later. Your worship, when we presented the capital budget, we presented you an envelope for the Uniplex and also an envelope for either the demolition of the former arena, the Centennial Arena. We talk about $250,000 to $300,000 that was put in the budget. We'll see what the final decision will be. New Year, we're there to mention to what to do with it. That's another budget. Yeah, thank you. Good question? No? Okay, go ahead. One last year, the year 2022. In the 3-year, so there's money planned for the youth house for new floors and new lights, and the Boys and Girls Club. Money is being planned to fix the roof, new lights, new inside plumbing, and the suspended roof is to be replaced. Same time as the lights, we want to redo the ceiling. So the Arthur J. LeBlanc Arena, we would be scheduled to fix the roof for the Santos Arena and to replace the ventilators. And finally, we have the Rotary Pavilion, would be the outside fixing of the outside side, and the total renovation for 2022 would be $315,000. So if we go to $350 a year, we accumulate some money to be able to make some major repair in future. Thank you for your presentation. Any more questions for Mr. Kubo? It seems no. Good evening, sir.
Question?
The next item. Let's take 5-minute break. Okay, so we'll take 5 minutes.
Alors, bonsoir tout le monde.
Good evening, everybody. We're back. So we'll invite the star of the evening, the financier. He will give us the rest of the story. He wants me to open up his mic. The stars, those are the ones that presented already. This year, compared to the other years, I'm going to start with the operations budget for the sewer, water and sewer. It'll start first now. That's going to be the star, exactly. On 2019, I'm going to start here because it will have repercussions of future years. We had a deficit of 2.84 million in 2019 for water and sewer. This year, we had a verdict from the Supreme Court. The Court of Appeal of the Court of Queen's Bench, 3.3 million with interest for recent years. So this is included in the 2.84 million deficit. It's been reduced because of this verdict. The city of Dieppe received too much from this business, TransAqua, who will reimburse us $300,000. So the impact will be $3 million. For 2019, we predict savings for water for the city of Moncton because we budgeted 7% of water being bought, which was less than what we planned. So savings of $160,000. So we should have a deficit of $2,800,000 for water and sewer. This budget is a public service utility. We have the option to use it within 4 years rather than the general operating budget. We have a surplus of $600,000. It's a revenue in 2020. Here we have a deficit that will be spread over 4 years, 2021 to 2024. So 2.84 divided by 4. So it gives us $70,000 per year. So this case before the courts, it had a general composite which eliminated in water and sewer. Historically, this case had a general portion attached to it. It was removed from the verdict. It had no effect. So here we propose that the operating budget contribute to this deficit of $1 million, 1/3 of the amount. So $240,000 per year transferred to the water and sewer budget against this deficit. So $460,000 we should recover per year in the budget, 2021 to 2024. We have about 11,500 equivalent users. So there's 460,000 divided by that gives us an impact on the rate of 42 dollars per user. However, we'll do this gradually. If you remember last year, I presented the budget without increase in rates for the next 4 years. With what happened this summer, it's no longer the case. We plan to increase the rate of $16 per year on the next 3 years. That would be 1.7%, so that's reasonable. With respect to the budget for 2020, you can see here the increase of $16, $6 for water and $6 for sewer. So the rate for water would go from $4.88 to $4.96, and for sewer $242 to $250. With Transaqua, the rate will remain at $210. The increase would be $16. So an increase of 1.7%. I need my glasses. I can't see the column anymore. The period. For 220, this is the revenue. For water, it's 5.7 million, which is 44%. Sewer is 5.3 million, 41%. And other two amounts, general operation fund, 1,600,000 to 1.7 million. Other revenues, $300,000. Transfers from reserves from last year with expansion Dieppe. We borrowed for work that was done. We have money that is reimbursed every year. For analysis and expenses in 2019, for 2020, it increases. Last year it was 12.93 million, and I took 120,000, subtracted from that. We have expenses that only come once, and that was $60,000 or a basis. The basic budget is $12.75 million. For 2020, for the new elements, there was a change for 2020, and I'll explain them in the next slides. $140,000 and the 180,000, and transfers are 90,000. Changes in 2020 for expenses that we already had in the budget and that continue in 2020. The salaries, for example. So with the same services, the same expenses continue. With the things that just happened once, we talk about $140,000, and $104,000 is for the maintenance of the pumping stations. We're going to change valves, pumps that will be changed, replaced, paint at the interior of our water reservoir, so those costs, those expenses are included in the maintenance. And $34,000 with information technology for the servers, cameras in some pumping stations that have to be replaced, and equipment for IT, and for the new expenses that will be repeated year after year. For 2020, we're going to start with $180,000 for a program of maintenance of assets. With maintenance that we saw before, $104,000, we don't want them to get old. We want to keep them in good state for our maintenance program, this 100,000 for 2020 is not associated to anything. If we don't touch it, we'll put it into reserve at the end of the year. But if we need to spend $50,000 for instance, we'll have to come before council for authorization. And as we saw at the beginning of the meeting today, we have the new positions for 2020, so it's $80,000 for water and sewer. Thirdly, we have transfers to reserve of $90,000, which is essentially a surplus of 2018. The financial plan predicts that all surplus will be transferred the next year to reserve rather to pay current expenses. So we have $80,000 that we're going to transfer into reserve from 2018. For 2020, for the changes, they're existing expenses. It's a bit of fluctuation. There's $100,000 less. Here we have $47,000 for salaries, 1.7%. We also have a savings because we installed new software, and when we transferred, it had been manually done with Excel, and with this new software, we found there was one position extra, and so we removed that. With the purchase of water, like I explained a while ago, we had good savings in 2019. So here I see a budget saving of $215,000 for two reasons. One is that the rate will go from 61 cents to 58 cents, but in the quantity we bought in 2019 has been reduced. So I increased the amount of 3%. So there's savings of $215,000 there. So we have a reduction of the debt for services for the debt, $13,000. And these are buildings, $12,000 from TransAqua. And with it, the verdict from the court, we reduced the number of units in Dieppe. So the TransAqua bill will be reduced by $12,000. There was an increase in units, but this reduction, administration costs, legal fees, there was an increase of $43,000, but there was a saving of 5% that we give to residents if they pay their whole bill at the beginning of the year, so they save 5%. That's very popular, so that's an expense for the budget. And there's $73,000 for the deficit that is disappearing from my budget. We had a deficit in 2017 for sewers, but we had a surplus for water. And if you look at the expenses for sewer, there was a deficit. It disappears to create a reduction of expenses for the budget for the sewers. So that's the section of expenses. I could answer any questions if there are any. Councillor Alain. We see today the results of the verdict of the court. It's an injustice on the citizens of Dieppe. We've seen that the instances have not well interpreted the law on the municipalities, and it's the Dieppe taxpayers that will have to pay. This year, A lady came to talk to us about people on fixed salaries and water and sewers. So in 2018, how much were we paying for water and sewer? I don't have my notes with me. I can't tell you exactly, but it was about $16 less than the $940 in. I don't have the exact figures. We see that there'll be an increase of $16 in 2020. In 2021, it will be $972 and $988 on 2022. So the other $8 is to increase a normal increase. Is there a way? I think of this lady that are on fixed incomes. It's a big percentage. Is there a way that we could find some other efficiency? With the section of the new points, those are the positions that were presented right at the beginning, 7 new jobs plus 5. For the Uniplex, but that's 100% general, but the 5 positions, there's a portion for water and sewer in their salaries. And I'm going to enumerate later in your presentation if I could find the $80,000, but we have to make choices. As a city, we must do that. The plan is good. But we don't think of the lady on fixed income. It's hard to digest. In 2022, the increase will be $48. For some people, life is difficult. It's tough. So I don't know if we think about that individual right now. Thank you. Councillor Godet. Thank you, Your Worship. I have a comment. I presume that the increases in the next 4 years depend on the Supreme Court, and if we win, we can go back and revise these figures. Of course, absolutely. Like I told you last year, I didn't plan an increase. 41% of the money comes from sewers and 44 from revenues from the water. Do you have percentages from the commercial and residential sectors? So in 41% of revenues from sewers, what is the commercial industrial point and residential point? Is it 20%, 50% for the use of water? I think it's 65-35, but I would have to check to make sure. Have you thought of having rates in these increases rather than have one general rate for everybody? We could consider part of the question, part of Councillor last question, maybe make changes in these rates, commercial rather residences. That's what I presented last year, and I'm going to present again this year. Commercial will increase much faster than residential. What is that increase? What is the percentage? If you allow me, I'll present it a little later. Okay, then I shall wait. Thank you. Councillor Leboutier, thank you. I have 2 questions. Firstly, on the transfers into reserve for water and sewer, as you explained, is there a limit that we're going to put in reserve? Yes. I'm going to talk about that a little later as well. There's a limit, yes. Second question. On the Norron case, 2.8 million, we're going to take 1 million from general operating to put against water and sewer. So it's not going to be 100% going back to the citizens. So we have an increase for revenue this year with fiscal taxes. Is there another way we can share that with the additional revenues? It's a historical plan. The billing of water and sewer is 1/3 general, 1/3 water, and 1/3 sewer. So that's what I'm presenting here. But it's up to the council to decide if you want to add more in one area, you can. We are flexible, but how flexible are we with respect to reserves? I'll show you more details when I give you the general budget. We'll put one portion to reserves, but we're limited to the amount we can put there. If it's the water and sewer budget or operations, it's all the residents that paid for it anyway. So those are the taxes. We have taxation systems with New-Brunswick, but it's still all the residents that pay their property taxes. Anything else? No, thank you. Councillor Leblanc. Thank you, Your Worship. If you look at the deficit for water, $40 per user, do we have to divide that in 3 years? We could put it over 4 years. That's what I'm going to ask for. The $16 per year, these $40 could be over 4 years or 3 years, 20, 21, and 22. Thank you. That's it for the increase for 2017 for sewer and water was $12. So we'll continue. Thank you. So here you can see a resume of how the funds are distributed for water and sewer. So salaries represent 2.97 million of the budget of 13.04 million. And there's an increase of $128,000 from last year. There was the impact of $80 for new positions and $48,000 for existing positions for salary increases to 2.5%. With purchase of water, a reduction of $215,000, so $1.86 million for sewer waters treatment is $2.45 million. The capital for operations will increase from $178,000 to $1.19 million, and in that amount, excuse me, that's the next item. With capital of operations, we try to be more aggressive so as to increase the money that we can put into cash for our capital projects so that we don't have to borrow. So for the debt service, there's a reduction of $13,000. And operations for water, there's an increase of $133,000 to $1.17 million. And like I started to explain, it was with the $100,000 for the assets and $100,000 for pumping stations. So that's what we see here for the increase of $133,000. $3,000. For the operations and sewer, it's an increase of $19,000, and transfer to reserves is stable at $90,000, a reduction of $30,000.
The slide that I'd like to show you. So really, it was a little picture to show you all the transfer that accompany how different funds interact between themselves. I just presented the Operation Water and Sewage of $13 million. On the left, there's $11 million that come from the water and sewage rate, 1.6 million come from operation, and the other sources are represent 200,000. There's also 100,000 plan coming from the reserve of water and sewage. There is a transfer between the operation to the operation budget. On the other side, we also see a transfer that is going to the reserve of operation, 1.2 million that will be used in the capital budget. Well, here, the capital budget that we presented a month ago represented $2.4 million. The source of financing for this one, we just saw the portion of the operation for water and sewage, $600,000 in loan, and the $200,000 that comes from other sources, such as the other government level of governments, or even Transagua, because they are partnered with us. And the financing come from the capital budget of $600,000. So it's to give you a general idea of all the transfers that can be had, what we call fund number two, of water and sewage, with the fund number 4, that is capital, and the different reserve, general operation, or water and sewage. This brings me to the reserves, and I can answer the question for Councillor Leboutillier on this. The reserve of water and sewage operation will be located at $620,000 at the end of the year. It is managed by the Local Governance Act that says that the budget must not be more than 5%. No, the reserve cannot be more than 5% of the previous year budget. In this case, the 2018 was 12.5 million. It cannot be more than 635,000. So we maximize this one pretty well. The different items that we see here are mostly the stabilization reserve, close to $500,000. Last year, we used it to balance the budget, if you wish, so that the increase of the water rate was not too high. Last year, there was quite a big increase in the water rate charged by the City of Moncton. At that time, there was a portion of that increase that was absorbed by the reserve, stabilization reserve. $50,000 for the IT system, $25,000 in unforeseen. So the $630,000, $620,000 in the operation reserve. As for the general capital, I estimated 2.3, but it will fluctuate between now and the end of the year, and I'll explain more. We have 300,000, the program of the asset, replacement of asset. The fleet projects are planned or underway, $8 million. So we have to decide which one we have to finance, where the transfer was not done, but the opposite is also true. If there are surplus or work that will not be completed in 2019 but only in 2020, then we have to put money in the reserve at the end of 2019 to use it in 2020. So this is what we will do for the next week, the week and a half, to come to you with other transfer reserves that have to be authorized or on December the 9th. Then there's a $600,000 that I mentioned to finance capital projects, for general capital projects in water, and there's a $600,000 in that reserve that is to be planned for future projects to be determined. As for the 5-year plan, one second, there is a question on the water storage before we go to the 5-year plan. Mr. Cadet, your worship. I come back on the question of additional cost for the $16 per year. According to my calculation, it equates $150,000 on the 3-year period. At the present time, we foresee in the city, we make a budgetary prediction on 375. The tax base that we plan for this year, generally speaking, yes. So we adopt the budget based on 375, 3.25, let's say 4.5, finally at the end of the year. Well, the difference between 325 to 450, could it be applied to go and get $150,000? Because we know if we give $150,000 every year for the next 3 years, if we win or lose with the Supreme Court at the end of the 3rd year, normally a price of water and sewage should be reduced from $40 because we will have completed the deficit at that time. Are my calculation wrong? If not, is there another way of using the $150,000 within the main budget without increasing the rate for water and sewage? Because it's punctual. Here we talk about an invoice of $3.3 million on a budget of $12 million. It's a big piece of the pie. The verdict was on the user fee. It's 100% water and sewage. Here we suggest 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, because historically that's the way we've divided it since the case before the court was divided with these components in mind. If we want to go higher, we can. But we have restriction. It means that the amount of money that we transfer from general to water and sewage is regulated by the Governor's Act based on 3035 on a municipality that is between 50 and 50,000 population, and we have that available also, so we should be okay as far as that goes. Essentially, you have the final word. I'm talking about the council. Yes, but I want to be guided here. Is it feasible? If it's feasible, and we do it, but if we don't do it, I'm looking at the reason to know at the present time we're preparing a budget for a certain amount. We can approve it as you presented it tonight. But should it go from 325 to 450, it means that we have a margin. Could we use that margin to deal with the problem that Councillor Alain brought up? But the fact that the 16 for the next 3 years is punctual. In other words, it's to eliminate the deficit. Yes, it can be done. It can be done. Yes, we have that flexibility, but Will it go from 325 to 4.5? Well, that's what I'm saying. Should it? That's what I'm asking. But it could be done. Yes, thank you. Maybe to manage his expectation, we will have more precise figure because we were coming with 2.25. So we had a discussion with Service New Brunswick. They told us at 3.25 we were okay. Will it come to 3.25 or 4.25? Well, the projections are good. Well, it could happen, but you have to keep that in mind. We have some realistic figures. Thank you. Someone else? If not, go on. So, the 5-year plan, the projection for the next 5 years, this is where we can see the unit rate, that increase. We've talked about it, $16 for the next 3 years to stabilize itself at $976. An increase of $8 from 222 to 223. As for the operation budget, it increased gradually from $13 million to $14.5 million in the next 5 years. The capital projects maintain itself of 2.5, 2.6 for the first years to go down to 1.5 and 0.8 the last 2 years. The loans, the borrowing, we will borrow 0.6, 1.5, and for the first 3 years, and not borrow for the last 2. And the debt ratio, so we want to make sure the debt ratio should reduce, go down to 19.8, just under 20 until for the next 5 years. Question, Ms. Michelle? So the ratio, the debt ratio in 2019 is what? Approximately 22%. Water storage, yes. Okay, let's go. This completes the presentation on water and storage. Okay, no more questions. Sorry, there is one last slide that mentions what Councillor Godet was saying earlier for the commercial rate. On the left, we can see that the rate for residential increased $9.40, and the increase of $16 for the next 5 years, and then $8. But there is the equivalence factor that we have to keep in mind for the commercial rate, and in the institutional commercial and those who have water meters. We have to come with a calculation. Well, what is the quantity? This is what makes the basis of the budget. What is the quantity of water that a unit or a residence uses year after year? And, well, we've been using 277 for a long time per year to translate to 700 liters. Trasagua 2018 came with a different calculation to show it should be reduced to 668 liters per day. And I showed you that last year, on a period of 4 years, we'll reduce it to 440 cubic meter per year. So in 2018, the factor of equivalence was 277. In 2019 was down to 267. So in 2020, it should be reduced to 258. From there, because if we take the $940 divided, it will give us a rate for the commercial and of $3.52 should increase to $3.71, an increase of 5.4%. So it considers a 1.7% increase in residential rate, as well as the increase, or the reduction, I should say, of the factor of equivalence that is about 2.8, close to 3% a year. If we follow over the years, for the next 3 years, it's an increase of 5.4, 5.5% approximately, to stabilize itself, because we will have reached the 240 cubic meter, so the increase will be the same between residential and commercial. Thank you, Worship. Commercial, are we in competition with Moncton and Review? Well, I did that work last year where I took all approximately 550 to 600 user of water counter, and I came to about the same. There was a slight difference between those who were using not much water and those who were watching a lot of water, but it was the same revenue, generally speaking, whether we took our way of calculating or Moncton's way of calculating. Anything else? Then water and sewage.
Presentation on the general operating budget. So now we're at the last presentation for the evening. So this is the general operating budget. We already talked about some of this, but we'll go through some of the same items. So with the budget in 2020, we have an increase of the tax base of 3.25%. We talked about it. And we talked about it to people of the province, and we thought it would be okay with 3.25. Property tax, there's no increase. We're at $1.6295. And for equalization grant should increase 3.5%, which is a portion non-residential of last year's tax base. It increased 5% for non-residential last year, and that's what we see this year in the equalization. Well, I think of it, the presentation that you had in your packages has been changed a little bit during the weekend. So between Thursday and now, I revised it a couple of times and I changed a couple of figures, but generally it's the same. With respect to property taxes, the figure you have in your package had an increase before the 3.25%. So with property tax, we plan on 53.2 million, and for equalization, 1.1 million. It's the same as last year. There's an increase of 3.5%. So property tax, it's about the same as last year, 98.8% of our revenues. And the other revenues of 4.2 million gives us a total of 57.9 million. With other revenues, I'm talking about the surplus of 2018 of $600,000, transfers to reserve, 800,000 to the reserve, and 900,000 with respect to revenues at the arena, 600,000 at the aquatic center, and construction permits for $300,000, etc. to do the same analysis as we did before with water and sewer, for 2019 to 2020, we had a budget of $56.5 million last year. I removed transfers to reserve and the one-time charges to get $53.4 million as basic budget. We have 4 levels: transfers to reserve of $1.4 million, that's stable. One-time expenses, $1.4 million. New expenses, $0.9 million. And the ones that continue from 2019 to 2020, $1.4 million. I'll go through one at a time. Before that, there's a question. Councillor Godet. Thank you, Your Worship. With the gas tax, where is this reflected? We received twice. Where do you find this in revenues? You won't find it here. That's in the capital budget that we presented at the last meeting. It was $1.7 million that we received that we're going to use in 2020. $2.4 million. So we didn't spend the money that we received this year. In 2019, no, we weren't ready to spend it. When we received the good news, we weren't ready to spend it. So it's not going into operations budget, but capital budget. So we shall continue. Last year, we had $1.4 million with transfers to reserve. As our financial plan dictates, we had a surplus of 2017 of $25,000, $50,000 in general reserve, but that reserve was maximized already. So our financial plan dictates that we should use half and half, one half for capital projects and the other for replacement of buildings or equipment. So we opted to finance capital projects of 2019 to $250,000 and for Uniplex as well, $250,000. But we had a surplus last year, $900,000 more revenue than expenses in 2019. So we transferred that to reserve. It was an amount to determine. We didn't know where we wanted to use it. During 2019, however, we saw that we could use $110,000 for the Uniplex for consultation fees. So that was $110,000 more, and $3,030 to for the parking lot of the Uniplex to make it bigger, and $500,000 balance. We'll use it at the Uniplex. As we presented on the capital budget, there's $2 million that we will put into the Uniplex, 1.7 for the financing campaign for $4.5 billion goal, and $300,000 for what we decide to do with the Centennial. So we have $300,000 for that. So $2 million. So we have $500,000 coming out of the $2 million. So for 2020, we have $1.4 million. It's the same thing, like I was saying, more revenue than expenses, but it includes a surplus of 2018 of $600,000. $400,000 was already dedicated to financing of Uniplex in 2018 that could be transferred to reserve. So it's a surplus. And the reason in that 2020 we're injecting it to Uniplex as planned, and the $200,000 that's left will go into general operations, there's 500,000 that we want to use for the deficit I explained a while ago, for $1 million. And I'm saying 500,000. I could have gone up to 800,000 because there's 300,000 to be determined. Because the reserve of general operations, we calculated 500,000 that we can use to maximize it, if that amount. Like this time next year, we realize that we have more space. We could put that 300,000 in reserve as well for the deficit of water and sewer. But right now, it's the maximum that we can put in reserve. So we still have $300,000 during the year. We'll determine what we'll do with it. Any questions? No questions. So for the one-time expenses, that they won't be repeated, or they could be expenses for on 3 years, but they would stop after 3 years. So we determined them as being one-time. 270,000 of 1.4 million. There are two possibilities, one from reserve and the other is from the general operations budget. So from this 1.4 million, 800,000 is from reserve. At the end of December, we'll have put that money to be used in 2020 at $270,000 for the facilitation of animation for the Dwell House. Half of it would be in reserve by the end of the year. 210,000 for renovation of buildings, as Mr. Como mentioned. $100,000 for a human resources consultant. The chief of police position was not filled, so we had a surplus in reserve in 2017. That will be presented on December 9th, and it will serve for the financing of the human resources consultant for 2020. $90,000 for the participatory budget. We had $500,000 in reserve, so we're going to do it next year. $90,000 because there's already $120,000 there. We'll use that in 2020. With IT, we have $40,000 for security audits, software, and equipment for the new council during the year 2020. $38,000 for consulting fees for the AJL project. That's for $350,000 for plans for 2020. And on public lands, signage, the baseball fields, Dwell House, so signage for $20,000. And in 2020, we plan a mobility summit for Dieppe, like Destination 2040. We want the population to know what is coming, and we want their feedback as well. The second part of the one-time expenses, finance in the general budget, the second part is directly from the budget, so it's $600,000. So the balance of animation for Dwell House, $240,000, and $200,000 for the construction to finish it, as Madame Duguay explained, for the basement of Doiron House, $75,000 for energy efficient projects for the MCF, for the project that we could get from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and for the RCMP building, $50,000. That should be ready by 2023. But before construction starts, there are expenses. Most of them will be capitalized. We won't be billed for it now. But there's a category of expenses that we must pay. They're operational expenses. Our portion should be around $50,000 for 2020. For 2019, I think it's about the same, $50,000. So we'll get a bill from the City of Moncton. It was budgeted. $25,000 for signage in the downtown. $15,000 for the opening ceremony of Uniplex. So that's it for the one-time expenses of $1.4 million. Questions? Councillor Leboutier. I have about your comment on why the participatory budget has an amount that wasn't used during the year. Could you come back to us? Maybe not now. Yes, we can do it now. The expert is here to tell us. That's a good question. We have the Fruit Trees Park. There were a lot of steps with planting trees. So that's going ahead next year. So we already have discussions for the installation. And it's the box of books at the Miro School. It'll be at our Uni Center, which is not built yet. And for next year, for 2 years, we had a project that we would have monies for. And the dog park, a part of it was finished this year, but it's going ahead next year as well. So that's $90,000. So we had some projects that went ahead. And in the School du Marais, for instance. Thank you. No other questions, then we shall continue. So the next category, the third, we're talking about new expenses for 2020 of $900,000. There are three parts. Firstly, it's the Uniplex. It will open in the fall of 2020, so there'll be new positions for $221,000 for 5 new positions for maintenance. There's electricity and heating as well. It's more than what we had budgeted for Centennial, $110 more from September to December. $65,000 for operations, water and sewers, maintenance, furnishings, etc. What is it here? We have revenues that are coming in to counterbalance these expenses. So we'll have an additional revenue of $100,000 for rentals. So we will have an operational deficit of $300,000. In our predictions last year, we had predicted $400,000 for operational deficit, but here we're at $300,000. For a new request from Human Resources, we have expenses of a bit more than $300,000. $275,000 is for the 5 new positions: technologist, operator, coordinator, and a leader of the platoon, programmer analyst, and a support technician analyst was 60,000. We have $80,000 for sewer and water. And then we have the shared position, $60,000 for communications officer and for Expansion Dieppe, and the reallocation of the budget with a reduction of the position public works, because that was budgeted 100% general, and the executive director was shared, so the 23,000 water and sewer contributes to $80,000, but generally there's no budgetary incidence because it's equaled out. Thirdly, we have other operational expenses in the budget, $200,000. There's $40,000 for TI, detection and management of corrective measures for software, equipment for zone connections, so we suggest $10,000 yearly to buy new equipment or replace existing equipment. Management of viaducts, $50,000 per year, $25,000 for tourist strategies, $50,000 is for a program of replacing Christmas decorations. We have a lot of decorations. We have them stored, but we have to replace them year after year. Like with Uniplex, for instance, we'll have to buy more Christmas decorations, so that's the budget. And $10,000 for the Hall of Fame at Uniplex. So those are my three pieces for the new expenses. Any questions? Councillor Alain? So the communications officer, that's not a unionized position, is it? No. With this tourist strategy, where are we at now with respect to taxes from hotels? We're still waiting from the committee and the regional commission. We're awaiting a report. It should be submitted in October. We're waiting for the details and rules. So now, since September 1st, we're accumulating the taxes in an envelope from hotels, but the regulations will be defined, so the money is in reserve, and we'll see what to do with it. So the Hall of Fame now is at Santa Leblanc. Yes, we're looking for a model that can integrate into a more modern approach for the Uniplex. Councillor Leboutier, a part of it, my question was answered already. With this tourist strategy, is the establishment of the strategy, or we're going to have more consultations? So we have an action plan for 2020. We're going to put into place this strategy with the resources that we have at hand at the time being. Councillor Alcino. For program for the Christmas decorations, could we have a small part for Acadian decorations? I would like to see Acadian decorations. I don't have the answer, but here it's for Christmas decorations, but I could get back to you for decorations for other seasons. I don't think this comprises all of them. I would like to see more Acadian decorations, not only on August 15th, please. We should study that So I'm making that request. We'll come back with a suggestion on December 9th. Okay, so we can continue now. The last category, they're continuing year after year. Firstly, we have $4,335,000 for salaries. We have increases of 2.4% and $325,000 for benefits, but we have savings with our student positions. So $40,000 savings there. And as well, savings with WorkSafe. That rate has been reduced by 23% for us. So we went from $3.40 for evaluation of salaries to $2.60. There are two reasons for that. For WorkSafe, the rates have been reduced in the province, and for us it's been 20 cents, but the other 60 cents is because we have improved our history, so we're more favorable compared to other municipalities. And there's an increase with an actuarial calculation of $120,000. It's done every 3 years. Now I'm in the third year. So next year, in 2020, I will hire the actuary for estimates for the next 3 years. And he will justify this amount. What is payable for us, we need 1.3 million. We were at 1.1 million, so there's an increase of $200,000 and $150,000 allocated to general, what you see today, and $50,000 included in salary increases for sewer and water. So that's the actuarial report on evaluations for sick leave. For external commissions, I'll explain it a little bit more detail later. I have a slide just for this one. The next three elements: increase in operational capital of $150,000, replacement programs $140 for assets, and there's a reduction for the debt service of $220,000. It's what we want, and I hope that will continue in the future with our debt, which is decreasing. We can increase replacement programs. 25% of the budget is reserved for these three items. We have 15% now, so if we can put 10% in capital and management of assets, and with our debt ratio diminishes, the other will increase. That's a good trend. That's what we want. With respect to the cost of water, an increase of $50,000, a transfer of $1.6 million in 2019 for snow removal, an increase of $75,000. We'll have a deficit in 2019 with respect to snow removal because of purchase of salt and sand. We had a lot of ice. We needed a lot of salt, and it cost more than predicted. So now we're looking for an increase for the 2020 budget. And as well, repairs. We had 3 major repairs on equipment last year, so we're looking for an increase for that budget. And as you'll see later, we had $400,000 in reserve in case we had a really bad winter, and it would cost a whole lot more. In the last 3 years, it's stable. I think it's 1.35 million. For legal fees, maintenance, and insurance should increase $110,000, $40,000 for legal fees, $45,000 for insurance. They already told us we'll have an increase of 10% of our premiums, and an increase of maintenance of different buildings, $65,000. So we have 19 buildings. So it's an increase for each building, $5,000, $10,000, $50,000 here and there. And for $50,000 for other operational expenses, on a budget of $12 million that includes legal fees, maintenance, and insurance, but also electricity, water and sewer, property taxes that we have to pay to the province. So this is going to increase $50,000. So that's it for those expenses, Your Worship. Any question from councillors? Then we'll go to the next slide. For distribution of funds, I'm going to skip this slide and I'll come back to it later. I wanted to talk about external commissions firstly. I probably should inverse these 2 slides. I am in control here anyway. That I see your colleague that agreed that you should have done that. With respect to external commissions, we have increases. We $550,000. So it's the RCMP, which increases of, it was an increase of their staff, $5.9 million right now, an increase of $425,000. Kodiak Transpo and shuttles, we should be at the same budget, $1.3 million. Expansion Dieppe asked an increase of $40,000 for their budget at $1.19 million. Solid waste should have an increase of $50,000, $1.2 million. 3+ stable budget at $149,000. And the desinsectization, $5,000 for $96,000. Capitol Theatre, the same amount, $75,000. And adapted transport, it's not really an external commission, but I always put it in this block, an increase of $30,000. Historically, we always had a budget of $250,000, but in 2018, we had one of $298,000, 2017 as well, in 2019, $295,000. So we want to increase it to $290,000. So that is our external commissions for $10.2 million. So that's one of the presentations that has changed a bit since we got our documents. This presentation will be sent to you on the intranet, so you can just get it tomorrow, the revised edition. Councillor Alain. So the external commissions for policing, I'm on the commission, the regional commission. We do excellent work. And I think we have the tools we don't have the right tools necessary since 2014, and I think this year we should give them the resources they need. I don't agree with an increase of expansion Dieppe. When you look at 3+, the ecosystem of the economic development in our region, we've had discussions all over New-Brunswick, a lot of elected officials for the number of population here. The Economic Development Agency is big for such a small region. As a government, we start a program and we always have trouble ending it. So today, especially for 3+, for the contract services is finishing at 2020, we should end that contract, and I think we should do so. The 3 cities during the last 20 years, the people from economic development do the same thing, so we could save $149,000. As far as expansion Dieppe, I would like to see an equal budget, an increase of $40,000. We have challenges with expansion Dieppe and economic development. I think in 2020 we should have a plan. I've seen some of the results. I don't see giving them an increase. They have to work with the resources they have right now. I respect everybody on their board, but they must find solutions and efficiencies. If there's an entity that should do it, it should be expansion Dieppe. That's economic development. That's why we're here, to be efficient. And my last point, I was talking to a former mayor today, a mayor in 1994, and for capital in 25 years we get 2.4 million. I think we did our part. There's an evolution in the last 25 years with respect to people. Riverview has the Arts Center. We have our own Arts Center. Perhaps I would like more investment in our own cultural center. This person who talked to me, I asked certain councillors, they said that they would give an amount for a certain amount of time and then they would be self-sufficient. I like to promote arts and culture. We have a lovely center, it's a jewel here, and it needs help. Maybe for next year, I don't want surprises, but perhaps we should spread it out and reduce this amount of 75,000. Maybe next year give 50,000, a year after 25,000. There's a beginning and there's an end. So with these external commissions and these 3 points, I believe we should do that. It's 20% of our salary, of our budget, and we can't control it year after year. Thank you, Your Worship. Other questions? Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to add that the increase for expansion Dieppe, I don't agree with Councillor Alain. they added the immigration strategy. And we approved a half a position for an information officer that they'll share with communications. So for those reasons, they need this $40,000 to do that. Thank you, Your Worship. For the $40,000 for expansion Dieppe, it was for two initiatives they proposed for the budget process. One was for cargo for the airport. They've got a project. And secondly, I don't remember exactly, but it's a special project that was submitted at the budget process. I can talk to you tomorrow about it, but there are two projects, but not to add anything to the operations. Other questions? We shall continue. Okay, so we're going to go back now one slide. So we're going ahead by going backwards. So for the distribution of funds, we're talking about salaries. The total is $58.5 thousand, but it's divided into 7 expenses. Salaries $17.5 million, increase of $1 million. It was half and half new positions and increases in present existing positions. External commissions, $10.2 million. The cost of water for $1.6 million. Capital for operations. I was saying the increasing, and now I'm saying there's a reduction. It's because there's a loan that was done for asphalt. So we have expenses of more than $600,000 for the microsurfacing. So there's a transfer in the budget, which is temporary. $150,000 is being taken out and will go to other operations, but that's a one-time thing, maybe over 2 years. Spencer could explain it further, but Mrs. Spencer, in our program for preservation asphalt, we started doing microsurfacing. Our asphalt does not last as long as we would wish, so this is a way to preserve it. So we take this money to do microsurfacing. We're at $3.2 million each year. So some is for capital projects, but $570,000 will be operational. Any questions from councillors? Everybody likes the asphalt. Continue, please. With respect of the debt servicing, $220,000 reduction at $8.3 million. Transfers to reserves, same amount as last year, $1.7 million, an increase of $225,000. Other operation expensive, increase of $1.2 million for $13.6 million. So that is a resume of our budget for 2020. In the past, this is my favorite colored slide. Like it, the same concept I have with water and sewer. It's to show you what is going between the different funds at the city. So you can see $58.4 million for operational, and $53.2 million for property taxes, and the one-time expenses for 2020 And for other funds, we have water and sewer, 1.7 million, and capital reserve, 400,000. There's transfers to the reserve of 1.4 million, and at the left you can see 1 million in operation reserve and 400,000 for general capital. On the left, for general operations, it's 2.4. We should be able to take out 800,000, so we'll have $1 million left, which is the maximum that we can put in general reserve. For general capital budget, we presented a budget of 16.3 million. The financing comes from general of 1.7 million, 1 million borrowing, and 8 million from other sources. 2.3 million should come from capital reserve fund, and 700,000 should return to capital reserve. For the municipal fleet, for instance, 1.2 million, but we plan buying about vehicles for about $700,000. So if you have followed that, this is the big picture. So what's the bottom line? In 2020, no increase. Tariffs will stay at $1.6295. We have comparisons here with what it represents for a house of about $200,000. Here we've got $185,000, so property tax would be $3,000 in 2020 and 8.26 cents per day. So here is our pie of expenses. Here we can see 58.8 million. When I talk about 25%, we have 25% for capital operations. It's not quite 25% because of the temporary loan of $600,000 with expenses that are transferred, respecting engineering. For other expenses, it's stable year after year. I won't mention them all, but you can see the global picture. This budget of $58.5 million total. So with respect to reserves, I mentioned a while ago that general operating fund would be about 2.4 million at the end of 2019. The last dates that we have a maximum that can be injected in that, and it would give a 2.7 million capacity. The principal items, $400,000 for snow removal if we have a hard year, $235,000 for emergency measures in case something happens, we will have money. We talked about the animation for Tuaro House, $270,000. And the incentives in the downtown area, the budget right now is $375,000. It wasn't used in 2018. We don't foresee using it in 2019. So we have $350,000 in reserve. In 2020 and subsequent years, we have large projects. Some of them have started on Acadie Avenue, for instance. We have incentives that will be paid as the development goes on. So in the downtown, we have increases. We plan $300,000 to $400,000 on the next 3 or 4 years. So our budget of $175,000 will not be sufficient. We have a reserve to pay what is missing for the financing, but we will have to increase these incentives. It's good news because construction and the tax base will increase in consequence. With these incentives, 75% of the amount that we receive will be paid. Questions? Councillor Gaudette. Thank you, Your Worship. With the incentives, I didn't understand. I thought that was revenue neutral. We don't take out money, but you reduce the taxes annually during a period of time. Why do we need a reserve for incentives in the downtown area? I didn't understand properly. The increase of the tax base includes all new development. We don't have a formula to calculate incentives in the downtown, so we have to show it in our expenses. We have reimbursements for those who qualify for incentives, so we have a revenue with an increase of the tax base, but we have to put them for the expenses that are reimbursed, so that's why we have a reserve. So we reimburse after we have the tax base, yes. So we have a revenue and the expense goes in another account. It's based on a certain percentage or a number of years. So it's an in and out expensive. But it takes a period of time. If you give an incentive and it takes 5 or 6 years to come back into the converse, then we have it as a one-time. So $210,000 for building renovation programs that will be used in 2020, $192,000 for IT systems, information technology, $110,000 for human resources consultant, and $125,000 for the participatory budget. As Mr. Richard mentioned, those projects will finish in 2020. So we have $125,000 now, and we can use $90,000 in 2020 to finish these projects. With respect to general capital reserve, we have $11.2 million. It should change a bit before the end of the year because each capital project will be done in concert with engineering to see what are we going to do this year, what amounts have to be transferred from reserve or to reserve. So with the asset replacement program, we have $2.7 million, and that's the municipal fleet. We should have $4.7 million for Uniplex with all the transfers during the years. This amount should be zero in 2020 when construction will be finished, but it's there temporarily to pay the bills. All the other projects that are ongoing or in the future were $2.4 million, and we have $1.4 million to be determined. Councillor Alain, everybody likes asphalt, but capital projects as well. With this respect to synthetic fields, that's for 2020. It's conditional. What have we done up until now? Have we talked to provincial and federal governments lately? We had an update 3 weeks ago for infrastructure program. His worship had a presentation done to the minister. Nothing has changed federally. We had federal elections, so not much has happened lately. Not until the new cabinet will be put into place. So we did an update with the civil servants, and the file is active. We have no answers. So we have a project for Dieppe that's ongoing, or we're waiting for all the interveners, all the players are in place. Provincial said that they will not invest before March 31st, so we're waiting for the capital budget and the provincial budget and March 31st. So we'll see if there's any movement or anything new. It's not obvious, but we're continuing the work. Good work, Stefan. Councillor Laboutier, that was my question, Your Worship. Where are we positioned now with the budget this year? It's in reserve. Councillor Godet, thank you, Your Worship. I have a point that I hear lately. It's the use of synthetic fields. Before we make a definite decision, what I hear lately about possible contamination of products used on these fields, we should look at that further, because they use tires, small pieces of tires on the field to keep the grass straight up. And there could be contaminants. I saw 3 videos lately on that, and I have the impression that the Minister of Health will look at that, because in the United States, some states condemn the use of synthetic fields because they use crumb rubber. It's rubber full of carcinogenic products. So we have to ensure that we make the right decisions. Of course, it's a controversial subject. We don't have to go to the United States. Montreal, for instance, has put back all future development to get explanations on synthetic fields. So we'll take that into consideration. There must be a way. It's not you. Synthetic fuels are not new on the planet. They're used everywhere, all over the world. We know the needs of our community, whether it be for football or rugby or soccer. We know what our needs are. We'll have to take a wise decision and consider the long term, of course, as always. Finished? Now we're on the last slide of the evening. So our 5-year plan, what our predictions are for the next 5 years. The big part of this is the tax base. This year, 3.25 increase. For the next years, we see a reduction, which would be 1 cent. But you have to take into consideration that if the tax base is above 2%, it should balance our budget, because it asks for 1.5 to 2%. So for the next 3 years, we have an average of about 2%, so that we have no increase on property taxes. And the last 2 years, we see 1.25%, and the tax base will stay at 2% per year. Then we would not have an increase of 1 cent. So we're asking you now for no increase in the next 3 years, but to keep in mind that it's the tax base that will dictate will we have increases in the following years. So we're balancing our budget very well. So for operations budget went from 58.5 million to 62.2 million. Capital budgets, investments, 16 million on the next 5 years. Borrowing, I congratulate ourselves. We're maintaining 1.5 million of borrowing per year. It takes care of our capital projects and what we can do with the money. So capital budgets have to be justified to make the grade. So the last line, the debt ratio will reduce 14.4% to reach 11.9% in 2024. So we'll get to 10% of debt ratio. This concludes my presentation on my budgets, general operating budget, and water and sewer. Any questions? If not, I know this isn't finalized. We still have touch-ups to do, but I want to congratulate the administration team for their excellent work preparing this budget, all levels of the organization. We've had challenges, but many communities would like to have our challenges, that's sure. So we shall continue to make progress in our community, in our files, especially community natures and economic factors. So good night, everyone.